Oh, we are live. Welcome to the Regular Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Chap, along with my co host, Cindy Berry. Which, tell them hi, Cindy. Tell them hi.
Hi.
Now, once upon a time, Cindy was a detractor of my movement. My movement. My movement. Where I told you guys that Dylan Larkin would be a good ass player with a winger next to him. And 2 years ago on the Cindy and Joe show, there was a lady that's wearing red right now. She called me a liar with video proof. Now, it's not just her because I go on those Red Wing groups and they were calling me an idiot too. So it's not just her. So I'm gonna take my victory lap because obviously with Alex DeBrincat, Dylan Larkin, they are a freaking wagon. And everyone that thought that DeBrincat was too short or he couldn't ride the rides at Cedar Point, um, he's doing a hell of a good job. Like they are doing a hell of a good job. If you look at this is DeBrincat and Larkin together. 13 goals, 14 assists, 27 points. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. They're a wagon right now. And all these people that were telling me, no, Larkin is just a second line center. When you get him a winger, he was going to be really, really good. And they got him a legitimate winger, and you can start to see he's becoming a better player because of it. Now, Cindy, tell him.
I've been biting my tongue, waiting for you to finish your victory lap before reminding you that you were also the person who said that you didn't think Boston would be a problem this year, that you didn't think
mistakes were made. Mistakes were made.
And if I'm not mistaken, they are undefeated, along with a couple of other teams in the league as well. So, the Vegas Golden Knights are undefeated. Boston and Colorado Avalanche are real rivals, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe de facto rivals might be Boston only because they're in the same division, but Colorado is truly our rival. They're undefeated as well. So the Red Wings are not the only team having a great start to the season. I think the reason why the Red Wings are news, not only because this is a Red Wing podcast, and so obviously we've got our finger on the pulse and have for quite a few seasons now, but the reality is that I don't think people expected it. I don't think people were buying into your theory, Joe, that if we got Dylan Larkin a winger, because everybody thought Bertuzzi was that guy, and they thought that everything else was the problem, right? Because Dylan and Tyler were so close personally and all this other stuff. But the reality was they just didn't have the rest of the talent that they needed. And I'll be honest with you, I think DeBrincat is the winger they have been waiting for. I think he is certainly the game changer. I know that sounds kind of obvious, but not necessarily, because you could make the argument that quite a few of those guys that were brought in, Kopp, Compher, these guys could have been game changers too. And I think, but really, Alex DeBrincat was the game changer. And I think the dynamics and the synergy of all these guys who played together at Michigan, that is coming back. It's just like riding a bike. You know what I mean? It's coming right back. Now, the one thing I said last week was I wanted to see how long it was going to take for this team to really start to gel and to see the chemistry start happening. The good news that I have is I'm seeing that now. I'm seeing it now, and that's early enough to really make some significant progress before this crazy winning streak is no longer sustainable. As Derek Lalonde pointed out, he even said, look, this isn't sustainable, but we're going to enjoy it while it lasts. So good news is I see that chemistry and that synergy happening much sooner than I thought. And that is good news.
It's not sustainable, the pace that they're on right now. It's really not. But it's fun. It's a good glimpse of what they can potentially be. Like, obviously, you're not going to see them rattle off, 5-2 every, 7 games. I mean, that'd be amazing, but that's just not going to happen. Eventually, you're going to have laws in a season where you're going to go through an injury kind of turmoil. But if you got enough depth, you can kind of get above that. But with this team, what they're surprising me with about the most is they got depth scoring too. They got guys that are helping out in the third and fourth line. Joe Veleno, who was Cindy's Italian comparat. he's playing out of his mind.
I'm glad of that, because I'll tell you, I was worried about Joe Veleno for the last 2 seasons.
Well, we were both worried about Joe Veleno.
I'm like, well, I was worried about him because I knew some of the talk and some things that were going on, and I was like, Joe, you got to get your head away from the wrong focus. You've got to get back there because you're fighting for your job. And he really, I think this was his last chance. If he did not make a significant amount of progress this season, I think he was gone. I think he was going to probably be gone, at the trade deadline. I mean, like, he wouldn't have even made the whole season. But Joe Veleno has earned himself a stay of execution. And I'm glad to see it.
And here's the thing. The goals per game for the Detroit Red Wings is they're number 1 in the NHL right now with 4.86. You're not going to be able to keep that pace right now. But what I can say about that also is that, like, their offensive game is way better than it was in years past. It's way better than it was last year. And last year you kind of had that month or the 2 months where November and December you won 4 games in that stretch.
Right.
I don't anticipate that happening this year. And if you get to a point where you're getting in January and February, you're not going to be making up those points that you were making up last year, because when you fell into the hole in November and December, that's what cost you the playoff spot. Like, it literally did. You can go back and check it. If you went back and won like maybe 2 more of those games, you would have been right there at the edge of the playoffs. So what I talk about all the time, what Cindy talks about all the time, is like the Red Wings needed a winger like DeBrincat, but I didn't anticipate DeBrincat being this good. I didn't anticipate that at all.
Well, I wasn't sure either. Although you say you didn't anticipate it, but yet when we talked about who we thought our leaders were going to be, you did say that DeBrincat would be the leader in points. I thought it would be Larkin. You thought it would be DeBrincat, and that the goals would, or that you thought he was going to be leader in goals. You were right about that. I thought he'd be leader in points, and Larkin vice versa. So, but they are right there neck and neck, which shows a lot about. Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
There you go.
Yeah.
So you were right about that. I think you had DeBrincat pegged pretty well. Perhaps what you didn't maybe think you were going to see is the tremendous impact that he's had and the influence that he's had on the rest of the team. That's where I think the DeBrincat, everybody's drinking the DeBrincat Kool-Aid, you know what I mean? They're like standing in his air, trying to just breathe it in. And I think they are. I think they are all holding themselves to a higher standard. And that was evidenced, I think, by the post-game presser that Dylan Larkin had when, they lost the game against Seattle, a game they should have won. They know they should have won that game, but their demeanor wasn't like, oh, this sucks, we lost, oh, geez, well, try again, at least we got a point. No, they were pissed, and good for them, because I think that shows a shift in their whole attitude about losing. It's no longer, well, we're rebuilding, well, we're going to give all kind of excuses or whatever the case might be. No, they're like, heck no, we should have won that game. And Dylan Larkin, I think, took a great deal of the responsibility for taking that penalty late that probably cost them. But you know what? It happens. It happens. Just like with the Lions last week. You have those games. Those things happen. And so I think the fact that, Dylan Larkin took responsibility really for the loss. I don't think it was all on him, but I appreciate his attitude, and I appreciate the whole demeanor of this was unacceptable. They know that they're better than this now. Do you know what I'm saying? It's different than last season. This season is they know they're better now.
Well, I think there's a difference, because when you're winning games, right, I think it comes with a certain amount of confidence that you bring to the table. So, like the Lions, we talk about the Lions like in that segment a little bit, but you look at the Lions, like they went to that Baltimore and they got their ass kicked. That's going to happen during a game, course of a season. The Red Wings are going to get shelled at some point, 6-0, 5-0, something like that.
Hey, by the way, I saw Lomas Brown again today. I just didn't get a chance to get a picture with him again. Sorry.
Man, oh man. You know what, Cindy? You are really missing the mark. You're really missing the mark. You can't be doing that.
Sorry, Joe.
Now,
my apologies.
Now, what I was saying, though, is like, I think there's a certain level of confidence that has came from these wins that they've been able to accomplish. When you put together a few wins, it becomes the expectation, not the oh, we lucked into a win. When you expect to win, it's a different feeling in the locker room, because like if you lose a game, it's like damn it, we could have had that one. Like yesterday's game, they should have won that game. Lucas Raymond hit the post, and then it comes back for a 3-on-2. I think it was a 3-on-2, and it goes in the back of your net. That just that happens. That's the luck of the draw, and that's the luck of sports sometimes. So it's good that Dylan Larkin has taken that leadership role of we should have won it. It's my fault, kind of placing blame on himself. But at the same time, when you look at this team right now, they're playing really, really well. And like you said, they should have won yesterday. You could argue that New Jersey, they deserved a better fate because they are the better team for 2.5 periods. It just so happened that Jack Hughes turned into Superman and just went off. But Jack Hughes has been doing that to a lot of people this year. So, yes, I was wrong about the Boston Bruins. But no, I was not wrong about Dylan Larkin because Dylan Larkin is turning into a damn good player with Alex DeBrincat on his line. And that's exactly what the Red Wings needed. Like, a lot of people were going, oh, but he had Bertuzzi. Oh, but he had Lucas Raymond. You cannot put a price on a guy that is just deadly with his shot. You just can't. Like Mikko Rantanen for Colorado, amazing. David Pastrnak in Boston, unbelievable. You got guys like, Connor McDavid and Andrei Sletnikov in Carolina, unbelievable. But like when you have a guy that can just shoot the puck and make plays happen, and when he's on the ice, don't think the other team has to okay, DeBrincat's coming down this wing, we got Raymond on this wing, and then Larkin's coming up the middle of the ice.
Right.
Who do we send the coverage to? And most of the time they'll send the coverage to DeBrincat, and that leaves Larkin open, that leaves Raymond, with a less of he's not getting defended on, like where he can't get the shot off. It's a good feeling to have, and that trickles down the lineup. It just does.
It does. It does. And the other thing that I think is been overlooked really is the tremendous improvement we've had on defense. We've really, even though I wasn't too happy with them a couple of games ago or whatever, I saw some things, got some holes there. But still, if you look overall at the improvement on the defensive pairings and their effectiveness, I think what Derek Lalonde has done is he's really found some very good chemistry with his defensive pairings. And I think that they're only going to get better as the year goes on. So that'll be good news too. And they're continuing the physical type of play. I hope they do not abandon that. We saw that with the Lions this last week, where the Lions, they were playing man-on-man defense, and then they switched to zone, and it was just. And I know you put out a post saying, stop zone, no, stop. Don't change what you're doing. Don't change what's working. And so
sometimes coaches, they think that they have to fix something that's not broken.
Right.
And it happens all the time with every coach. I mean, I remember Mike Babcock. There was one series in the playoffs where he found himself down 2-0, and he needed Ozzy to save the day because they decided to switch to like a 1-3-4, a 1-3-2, which made no sense at that point in time because they were the better team. But like all the time, coaches try to fix something that's not broken. You're a politician. A lot of politicians try to do the same thing over in your neck of the woods. They try to fix something that's not broken. It's like, guys, it's common freaking sense. Like this, hockey is a kid's game. Football is a kid's game. There's some things that require intelligence, like running a Fortune 500 company or being a surgeon at a general hospital. But a hockey coach, you don't need to be like this intelligent person. You just need to be.
Oh gosh, now you just pissed off all the hockey coaches out there.
Well, you don't. I mean, think about it. Was Scotty Bowman the smartest guy in the world? No. But you know what he was good at? Hockey. Like that's all you have to be good at. That's all you have to be good at. And don't overthink yourself. I think a lot of coaches do it. Especially you see that with Toronto right now. They're and Edmonton's doing the same thing. It's like, come on, guys, like get your shit together.
Well, I think sometimes too, regardless of the industry you're in, whether it be sports, hockey, politics, doesn't matter. People want to have pride of authorship, and they don't even care, even if it goes bad. They'll defend it to the end. And but I hope that Derek Lalonde will continue to do what's working. I think he's definitely moving in the right direction. I think he knows that, but he also knows that they're still in somewhat of a Cinderella period
Yeah.
right now. He knows that. He knows that because he knows what he's really got to work with, and you're going to start seeing the flaws. So I just hope that the fan base doesn't get disillusioned when they start to see some of those things that don't quite grow right. And I'll tell you, in the next 10 days or so, in the next 6 games, we're going to be tested. We played Boston twice, once here, once in Boston.
Yep.
We're going to be in New York twice, or not
Yep.
in New York. We're going to play New York once with the Islanders and once
Rangers.
with the Rangers.
Yep.
All right. So we're going
And
dealing with New York twice.
They played the Winnipeg Jets, which they're rebuilding, but
you know, and people are going to say they should beat the Winnipeg Jets. Seattle had an even worse record. They should have beat Seattle, and I think that's the other thing that the Red Wings are a bit disgusted with, is the fact that they lost to a team that was really inferior, right? They knew they were the better team, and it was theirs to lose, and they lost it because of what they did wrong. And so hopefully they'll learn from that, because there will not be that margin of error when they go in to play the Rangers. There won't be that margin of error when they go to play Boston. You know, they can't screw around with it. They're going to have to stay solid on defense, and they're going to have to stay disciplined to stay out of the box.
Well, you said this is their schedule for the look ahead. They got the Winnipeg Jets on Thursday. That's a home game. They got the Bruins. That's an away game. So is the Islanders. You look at those 2 games that they have Saturday and Monday, which we might do the podcast next Tuesday. So that might be a good time. But if you look at Saturday, Monday, those are 2 tough games, 2 tough teams. I know people think that the Islanders are kind of like a pushover, but the one thing about the Islanders is they have a hell of a goaltender in Sorokin. Like, Sorokin is probably one of the best goaltenders in the NHL. And I know the Colorado Avalanche made it seem like he was not the best goaltender, but Colorado Avalanche has been doing it to a lot of teams. So it's not no different. But the Boston Bruins, that's going to be a supreme test, because you're going to actually see where you are in terms of your where you are as a team. Now, if you go into Boston, you beat Boston, we are sounding the train and we are all aboard, baby. Shoot. Like, we are going to go all aboard, because if you beat Boston, it not only shows that you are obviously playing good hockey right now, but it shows that you have the depth to deal with Boston. And Boston, I know I said that they were going to be missing Patrice Bergeron, but they got Pastrnak still, and he's doing a damn good job. He's shooting the puck. I think he's taking like 40th in shots in the NHL right now. He's taking a ton of shots. You know, they're shooting the puck. So they got a good goaltending. They got a good they score goals. So you just gotta like what you see. But the like you said, the look ahead to the next 10 games. I mean, just in the week that we have between our next podcast, you got 2 tough teams that you got to go on the road to play. Not going to be easy, and I know Lalonde is going to have them ready to go. But today it came out that the Brinket might not be in tomorrow because he's feeling ill. So that could drop you. So you're going to actually see what this team is all about when you don't have an Alex DeBrincat. Can you beat a team like the Winnipeg Jets? And that's what it's going to come down to.
Well, it's interesting, because that really leads into my next point, is that in addition to being very telling these next, between now and Thanksgiving, which is that benchmark we're all looking for, there's an awful lot of interesting games there that are going to tell a lot about this team. But what's also key is, if they want to maintain to a certain extent what they've got and stay in the standings where they need to be, you got to stay healthy. And that's the one big unknown. I mean, right now we're out Robbie Fabry. We can obviously do okay without Robbie Fabry, but I think he would add another layer of security there. He's a pretty solid player. So it does hurt a little bit. We don't recognize it right now. But what happens if we lose Alex DeBrincat? What happens if we lose Andrew Kopp? What happens if we lose JT Compher or Sprong or, God forbid, Billy Husso? Reimer right now is at the top of he's actually number 2 goalie in the league right now for his games, for his goals against, which is great. But again, is it sustainable? And what happens if we lose that? Do we have a contingency plan in place that can continue to be competitive?
Well, I think the Red Wings are more adept to handle injuries this year than they were last year. Because if you think about it, if you do miss a guy like, let's say, Kopp got hurt tomorrow, or JT Compher, right? Not saying,
or Moritz Seider, God help us.
Yeah, well, Seider, that would be a huge one. But you know what?
Yeah.
you can go to the Grand Rapids and you have a couple players that were supposed to make your NHL roster that you can go grab. You can go grab Berggren down there. You can go grab Marco Casper, Simon Edvinsson. Like, I'm not really entirely worried about the depth of this team. Now, if you start to go over with like a traumatic amount of injuries, like the Lions are starting to get to that point where it's starting to become a lot of injuries that you're dealing with, and there's only so much that you can deal with. I know all these Facebook sports warriors want to go, well, you need to have the best team possible. Well, I'm telling you right now, if you had the best team possible, most of those players you wouldn't be able to pay anyways. So, you go through the NHL, you go through the NFL, you go through Major League Baseball, you need a full roster. And if you have injuries, that could derail something really, really quick. I mean, we've seen it with the New York Jets. The New York Jets could be a playoff team right now, but they're going into the trade deadline thinking, man, we might have to sell some pieces off because they lost a key player. And that one key player, like the Edmonton Oilers are dealing with that right now. They lost Connor McDavid, and oh shit, you have a bunch of people in Edmonton that are just puckering up. They're like, oh boy.
Well, I'll tell you what, here's something else that is kind of floated out in the news and then it disappeared for a while. And I think you're going to see it come back. Do not be surprised if you see the discussion come back into the arena about acquiring Patrick Kane.
Yep.
Because I believe it would not surprise me that Steve Yzerman was watching to see how this team was going to perform, how they were going to develop, and if it was going to warrant an investment like Patrick Kane, because he's going to have to give up some things. It's going to be quite an investment to get him, but is it worthwhile to get him? And I think that it's possible that if we continue heading in the direction that we're heading, that Steve may want to pick up an insurance policy in Patrick Kane.
It's a good idea because I think that it's between us and Buffalo. That's my opinion. Obviously, you hear that Buffalo and Detroit could be the two ones he picks over, and if there's a player that you want to reunite with DeBrincat, it's Kane. I mean, he had his best years with Patrick Kane, and
Yep.
I think that a guy like Patrick Kane would love a guy like Dylan Larkin. I think he would love a guy like Dylan Larkin. One of the reasons that he had trouble last year with the Rangers late in the year is because he was playing with centers that couldn't pass the puck. Now, one of the things that Dylan Larkin does really, really well is pass the puck. So if you're getting these guys like Patrick Kane and DeBrincat the puck, they're gonna make things happen. If you have two of those guys on the same ice, it makes Dylan Larkin's job a lot easier. He's got a lot of open space to deal with what he's dealing with, and that's exactly what you want. So, can I see the Detroit Red Wings making a signing of Patrick Kane? Absolutely. But I think Patrick Kane is also looking at it like, okay, I'm going to wait it out just a little bit and see who is really the better team. You see a lot in the NFL where a player will wait till like week 8, week 9, and then he'll make this decision. He'll go, okay, I'm going to go to the Philadelphia Eagles. Well, no shit, they're in Super Bowl contention. Or I'm going to go to the San Francisco 49ers. Or when Tom Brady was playing with the Patriots or the Buccaneers, I'm going to go there and win a Super Bowl. Like, you want to go where you're going to have the best chance to win. And unfortunately for Patrick Kane, half the league is in salary cap misery, and there's only a couple teams that can afford the services of Patrick Kane, and one of them is the Detroit Red Wings. And I'm pretty sure that he would love to come back here because he did play Little Caesars AAA hockey in Detroit. So,
well, I'm sure he's been yearning to get back since then, Joe.
no, I think a lot of things have taken him from Chicago to New York, and I think he's seeing what he's been with 2 original 6 franchises. Let's make it 3, baby.
There you go. Well, I think you're right. I wanted to say something even prior to the season, but when we scooped everybody on the Alex DeBrincat deal, we got some retribution there. So I didn't want to say
which I got to make this announcement really quick. We are probably going to get our page back. So
all right.
So that is going to happen. So I've been talking to the Facebook people, and they got to give me my page back because I said some inflammatory things to whoever. I think it was Billy. It was Billy with the E. So instantly I thought Billie Eilish. Like this is a chick. But then in today's world, you can't really assume someone's gender.
That's right.
I was like, I didn't know whether to say sir or ma'am because like I didn't know. And then he got on the phone and I was like, okay, it's a guy, I think.
Well, let me confirm this for you just so you don't have any issues or any concerns. I am in fact a female. I'm all girl. Just so you know.
We have confirmed that via challenge.
So, but I think that Patrick Kane, I think you're right on both scores. So here's the situation with Patrick Kane, and it always was. Number one, Steve Yzerman wanted to see if the Detroit Red Wings were going to be competitive and really be making a run. I think everyone kind of thought they were going to make the playoffs. Let's see how deep they can get, and maybe possibly even looking at Stanley Cup neighborhood. Okay. But once he saw the direction that his team was going in, then and he wants to see a little bit more still, okay, but if he continues to see what he is seeing, I think he definitely has plans for the acquisition of Patrick Kane. And likewise, Patrick Kane wanted to see how the Detroit Red Wings are going to be, to see if they were going to be a contender, to see if that's where he wanted to go. So I would say that if you see the Red Wings continue along the trajectory that they are, providing that the terms are reasonable for both sides, you're going to see Patrick Kane in Detroit.
Yeah, I think that Patrick Kane will eventually be a Red Wing. That's my hunch, to be honest. I think that he wants to come. I think he would like to play with DeBrincat because it's a marriage that's made in heaven. And you got a guy like Larkin who can pass you the puck. If you're a guy that scores goals, you want a guy that can pass you the puck. And when we look at this, Cindy, these are the leaders right now. So we have in goals, we have DeBrincat, Veleno, Larkin, Gostisbehere, Cop, but you look at the top three assists, man. Obviously Dylan Larkin, but you got Shane Gostisbehere, you got you got Moritz Seider, and then you got DeBrincat and Raymond. That's roughly a first line, like your first pair of your defensemen, your first pair of your top line. Like that's what you want to see, and I think that's what we haven't seen in the past. I mean, usually do you have some guy up there like Kubalik or something like that, where you know that guy, it's not going to be sustainable what he's doing. But when you look at the leaders again, like DeBrincat could stay at this pace. I don't think he's going to stay at this pace, but he could stay at this pace. Larkin, the assists, they're just going to keep coming, and that's what you love to see from your captain and your first line. And Gostisbehere has been ungodly good.
I told you he was going to be. I told you that when I was at training camp.
You did say that because I think if we go to your picks, you said no, you did not say. But you said the most underrated player. Yes, you did. Yeah, because we said you said surprising. I said surprising player would be lying. He hasn't even played yet, so goes to show you how much I know.
You gotta go to training camp with me next year. I'm telling you.
I'm gonna go to training camp next year. But
yeah, you should be fun.
But they're playing so damn good, and I think it was Eric, Eric Miller. He said, it's so nice to see the power play, the offense come to life. It's been tremendous, and if you look at it, the power play has been ungodly good. I mean, I know the New Jersey Devils are really damn good at the power play, but you got Vancouver, you got Toronto, Tampa Bay. If you're in that top five, you're gonna win a lot of games that you shouldn't win because. Like yesterday, Seattle, they got lucky as hell on that no call that Jaden Schwartz had where he threw a stick and it stopped a one-timer. And they came back and scored like a minute later, so that's stupid. But it's the stupid refs, But if the third period, the Kraken took a lot of penalties, and you made them pay, and you got back in the game, you took the lead, and then you took a penalty. The way it goes in hockey is, usually the team that's on the power play the most is going to win. And if you don't have a good power play, it's not going to happen. You're not going to win as many games as you should because we see all the top echelon teams. Usually the power play is what drives their offense, You give like last year, I think you gave the Bruins a power play. It was ended up in the back of your net no matter what. Same with the Edmonton Oilers, but now Connor McDavid is not out there. So they're going to have to figure it out something. But this isn't sustainable at 41%, but it's a great start to the season. Obviously, you would love to see it stay in the top 5, top 10, but the way that they're playing right now, it's been a treat to watch them play.
Yeah, it's fun. Well, they're playing with energy and they're playing with confidence and they're giving the fans something to see. And they're, it kind of reminds me again of the Lions. And I think they made this statement too. Even the national newscasters or the local newscasters were saying that it definitely is having an effect. It's just this momentum. It's catchy. And, the Lions aren't afraid to take chances. And I think the Red Wings are doing the same thing. They're not afraid to be aggressive. They're being aggressive. They're being gritty. They're really, gathering that identity. The other thing that I'm seeing that I haven't seen in previous years, in previous years when you got guys playing on the third or fourth line, they're playing there because they weren't good enough to make the first or second line, but they kept trying to make their way up the scale. But what I see this year is I see guys that are playing on the third and fourth line just as good, but in their own roles and more comfortable in their own roles at being on the third and fourth line. They're not trying to be first and second line guys. They're okay where they're at and they're making the most out of that. So I think that there's a different psychological effect that's going on with those guys that are playing those depth positions. One of the things that Darren McCarty has always said, and he said it to me more than once, is he said, I knew I wasn't a first line guy. I wasn't a second. I was a fourth line guy. I was a fourth line grinder. And I was okay with that. That was my role. They needed me there. And he recognized his value in that depth position. And when he had the opportunity, he had the ability. And when he had the opportunity to make those real key goals, like those Stanley Cup winning goals, he was prepared to do that too. Yeah. But in the meantime, he wasn't trying to be, a Sergei Fedorov. He wasn't trying to be one of those guys or Steve Yzerman or anything like that. He was good with it. And I think I see that type of attitude emerging on this Red Wings team this year.
It's important to have those type of guys because over the course of a season, I think one of the things that can really sink you really, really quickly is ego. Ego can sink you more than anything in the world. You get a guy on the third line, and he's like, I should be first line because I do this X, X, and X. It's sometimes when you get ego in the locker room, they don't play as a team. They're more, he's maybe the guy's driving in the offensive zone. He says, I'm going to shoot this puck when he should have passed it over. Those type of things happen. And in years past, you've seen that a lot with the third and fourth line, especially where they would go out there and they're trying to make a name for themselves. So they're being over the ceiling of what they actually are. They're not accepting of their role. And it's like the New England Patriots, right? Now, Bill Belichick always said, you do your job. Just do your job. You're not, the backup quarterback is not Tom Brady. Mm-hmm. The running back is not the backup running back is not the starting running back. Okay. If you're the tight end, you're not Rob Gronkowski. So just do your job and do it like you're supposed to. Don't try to be anybody else but yourself because that's how you get yourself in issues. And you just brought up a good point. I don't see that this year. I really don't. I think that they're all playing and it was synergy together, kind of like the first and second line go out there. You put Comfer out there. You can have a couple guys come out there. And then you get the Rasmussen and you get the Sprong and they realize their role.
Well, absolutely. And that really does make a huge difference in terms of the whole, again, the energy on the team. You don't have guys who are competing against each other. You have guys that are playing for each other. And I heard that said actually also, I think Dylan Larkin even said it, that the guys are, maybe it was DeBrincat, that they recognize in the locker room, they're playing for each other, not against each other, not competing for roster spots. They're not competing for certain, positions or whatever. They are playing for each other. And so that has a huge effect on how they decide when they're on the ice, where they decide to pass, where they decide to shoot, whether they decide to, work with the guy or avoid him or whatever. And they'll deal with the consequences later or whatever, because they're just trying to show themselves well. That's not happening here. What's happening here is you've got guys that are playing for each other and they're playing for a common goal, and they'll do whatever it takes. They'll go out there and play naked if they have to, which, some of us wouldn't mind too much. But if that's what it was going to take, that's what they would do. They would humiliate themselves if they had to for a win, because that's what's important. And so that psychological game has changed for the Red Wings. And, either it's the physical results, the physical game, that's affected the psychological game or the other way around. Either way, they're both feeding on each other. Herb Brooks always said, the legs feed the wolf. And in my opinion, it's the brain that feeds the body, right? Once you decide to do something and once you've got your brain programmed a certain way, your body, so long as you keep it conditioned, your body will follow suit. And the brain and the body gets connected. And then all of a sudden you see all this amazing production. You see, and it's, that's the amazing thing to see. And I think that's what people are seeing with the Red Wings. They're seeing all of that kind of come together. The gelling is what I was looking for. That is really what we're talking about. That's what we're seeing. And I think that's what's going to take. And they just got to maintain it in the postseason, or to get to the postseason, they got to stay healthy. That's the next thing. They have got to stay healthy. That's the next thing I'm worried about.
Yeah, staying healthy is important. Obviously, if you look back at the games that they played, the Calgary Flames, they beat them 6-2. That Pittsburgh game that they had, that they won 6-3, that was a hell of a game, and the Red Wings played really good that game. The Sens game, that was a game that we were going to be talking about, how that was going to be the game that you would look at and go, that's kind of like a seismic thing for them. And then you got the Seattle Kraken, which that was a game yesterday, and they lost 5-4 in overtime. But all in all, like, you look at that and you go, it was a good 4-game stretch. You got to keep doing this. Now, you're not going to go 3-1 every 4 games. That's not going to happen. I mean, if you did that every 4 games, I mean, you're looking at Boston level dominance. So,
yep,
that's not going to happen. But you're going to go through walls in the season. But you just got to remember that the way that they're playing right now is kind of the way that you need to play.
I think they recognize that, and as long as they can maintain that, I think they're gonna. I think we've got a lot to look forward to. I just don't want Red Wings fans going, they lose a game like they lost to Seattle. I mean, the Lions lost to someone that they shouldn't have lost to either. Same kind of stuff. Everybody's going to have those bad days, but you got to stick with it. You just have to stick with it. And I think that the Red Wings are going to do that. I'm really excited to see how they do against Boston. I believe they beat Boston last year when Boston was on a hot streak.
Yeah.
I'm almost sure that they did. Yeah. And we thought, oh, this is a great sign. What I hope not to see, though, is I hope them not to have, like the Lions, they beat Kansas City, right? Great start. And then, it was going good. Then they lose to somebody, that they shouldn't lose to, whatever. And, early on. So if they come off a high against winning one of those games against Boston, I hope they don't fall to, say, then a team like the Panthers who are struggling, because that's what I most expect to see.
That's the thing you worry about with. That's the thing you worry about with some of these players, because they're seeing with the Lions where they're playing at such a high level, right? And they're a young team. So, like, when you're young, you're stupid. And when you're young,
right,
you believe everything that you hear in the media. So if you hear something that you're great, you believe it. And then sometimes you'll go out there, and if you hear you're great all the time, there's a point in time where you go out and you play a game and you just mail it in because you think that you're a better team. And that's not the way sports works. The game that you think that you're going to win, I guarantee you the other team is like, no, we're going to win. Now, that's the way it goes. Like, you just can't ever take a game off. And I think sometimes you see with, like you see in the NFL all the time, like there's teams that are like dominant, right? And then they'll go to play some crappy team one week and they'll get their ass beat. That's just the way it goes. Like, this is sports. You see it in baseball all the time where there's a team that's rattling off 10 straight and then they lose a whole series. And you're like, well, what happened here, dude? Like, what happened here? But that's just the way it goes. And with this Red Wings team, we're really going to see what they're made of when they start to lose games. Like, you lose 2 or 3 in a row. What do you do to get out of that snide? Because that's when you learn a lot about your team. That's what you learned a lot about the culture that you're building. And that's what you learn a lot about your leadership, because the leadership in the locker room is huge and paramount. But I got to say, I love the leadership that the Red Wings have, because they don't have just a guy like Dylan Larkin, right? They got David Perron. They got Petrie. They got Justin Hall, Shane Gothtsberg. Those are guys that have played in the league for a long time. And when you deal with when you play enough in the NHL, there's certain things that you've seen that you can tell your team, like, okay, We got to get back on the track, and this is how we're going to get back on the track, just playing our game. You're going to learn a lot more about the Red Wings when they start to lose, than what they're doing right now.
Right. Because you're going to see how they face adversity and how they overcome it. How fast can they rebound, So, for example, I think that this game that they lost against Seattle has that value to it, because now let's see how they come back against Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Let's see. Are they going to fall into a quicksand where they just continue to lose momentum, or are they going to rebound, regain some of that momentum, take that frustration and that anger that they have at that loss, and are they going to put that into another string of wins? And that would be a great time to do it, because again, you're coming into Boston, you're coming up against the Rangers, you're coming up against the Islanders. I'm not so worried about the Islanders, but the Rangers and Boston, those are going to be three tough games, tough. And so let's see how they can rebound after this loss. And because it's getting real for them, like, okay, maybe they were, like I said, they had the Cinderella slipper on for a while there for 5 games. Oh, we're winning. And all of a sudden now you've got to face the reality of a loss. So, and they're on a slippery slope. It can be a very slippery slope, because you're like, oh yeah, they're first in the league, second in the league. They were up there, certainly first in the division. They were for a bit there, at least tied up there with Boston before, when they were both, they were very, very close up there to the top. And the thing of it is that you've got Toronto nipping on your heels.
Yeah.
You've got, a couple other of these teams, they've only played 5 or 6 games. The Wings have played 7, and they're only up by 3 points. Now, granted, you have a very small sample size, but the reality is that you've got some teams in this division. You're in one of the toughest divisions in the toughest conference. So you've got some real challenges there. And then even when you get to the postseason, you've got to be ready to play teams like Vegas. You got to be ready to play the Colorado Avalanche. And you got to be ready to make a statement during those games too. They can't, not only do you want to win them, you want to win them as decisively as possible, or at least put up a very solid game. And I think that the other thing too is a lot of these guys that got brought on in the off season, you've got a lot of two-way players in there. You've got a lot of guys who are just so incredibly versatile and can really play both sides of the ice very well. And that's the other thing I don't think the Red Wings have had. They've kind of lacked in that area, and they've really shored it up. So now that you've got guys that, are more, allows Derek Lalonde a little more flexibility in what he does, and some more depth, I think that is going to bode well for them. Can't wait to see. These next 6 games are going to be just, in my mind, probably the biggest of the year, only because they're going to be the most telling.
Yeah, and I think if you don't play with the Brinket tomorrow, that will tell you a lot, because what you do when you don't have your guy, that's some of the things that you look at early in the season. You go, okay, if they can manage this, they'll be a good team. The part where I said the Lions were going to be a really good team was after that Seattle loss, because it was a game that they should have won. They played a damn good game. They just, they made mistakes, and they did like the Red Wings did yesterday. And it's like, how do you come back from that? And they come back from that by winning 3 straight games, just dominating their opponent. And that's what the Red Wings are expected to do. Now, when you go against a team like Boston, you're not going to dominate them, but you want to play on equal footing, give yourself the best chance to win, because you're going to need these points in the beginning of the season are the utmost crucial for any team. I know people think that you don't need these points. They're like hockey doesn't start until January. I can tell you this right now. The Atlantic Division is the only division in hockey where the last place team has 6 points right now. So they are 5 away from you at the last place. Like Montreal has 7 points right now. This division that you're in is so tough that Buffalo is the last place team right now. Will that stay the same? Obviously not. But eventually you're going to start to see these teams coming like really close to each other.
That's right.
The movement's going to be crazy, because this division is actually just outstanding. Like, there's not a team in this division that you go, maybe Montreal, but the rest of the teams, you're like, there's not one team in this division you can take lightly at all. You can't take Toronto lightly. You can't take Tampa Bay lightly. You can't take Florida lightly. Can't take Buffalo lightly. Ottawa, about Ottawa. So that's exactly what you're going to get to. I mean, like, this is a tough division to play in. So these points that you stack up in the beginning of the season, they're going to pay dividends when you get to like February and January, because there's going to be you built in some equity into your season.
And again, that's why I think you're going to see them bring on Patrick Kane. If they can get it done, you're going to see that, because I think Steve is going to do everything he can to protect those points and their integrity as long as he can, because he's hedging his bets against injuries, against losing guys like DeBrincat, or God forbid he loses Larkin, or whatever the case might be. I certainly hope that they're really, and I'm glad, by the way, they've got Klim Kostin. I'm glad they have him. I'm glad that Rass is stepping up. I'm glad that some of these grinders are coming out, because we're gonna need to defend those guys. We're gonna need to make sure that nothing happens to Larkin and DeBrincat, and if that's your wagon, as you put it, you better make sure that is going to stay on the tracks, right? I mean, you cannot afford to lose either one of those guys, because you can't say that. And to your point, that we're going to see what happens with DeBrincat out of the lineup, but you've got to see if that connection or that energy can at least be somewhat synthesized in somebody else, enough at least to get them through until whoever it is not healthy gets healthy. So I think Steve's going to take that insurance policy for sure, for that reason as well. We'll kind of have to see how things go, but the Red Wings are absolutely kind of the talk of the NHL, because nobody expected this. I really don't think they did. Quite frankly, I didn't expect them to do as well as they're doing so far, but at the same time, it's still very, very, very early. They really haven't come up against some significant competition. And what is it with the Detroit teams losing to Seattle? What is it in Seattle?
I don't know.
That's
a good point.
Is it just going to be like the city that, kicks our ass every time? I mean, come on, Seattle. We're the Motor City. We're tough. There are a bunch of pussies out there.
Well, yeah, we don't
Have
drink.
You been to Seattle?
We don't drink Starbucks coffee all the time. We drink Timmy Ho's. You know what? You bring up a good point, because the Tigers got swept against Seattle. So, and they don't have a basketball team. So, yeah, that'd be funny to go back and look at it, because Seattle does have our number for football and hockey, because we lost both games to Seattle last year. The Red Wings did, the Kraken. They lost in Seattle. Yeah, they lost in Seattle, and they lost at home. Bjorkstrand, and they lost in overtime too. But
there's Motor City kryptonite over there in Seattle, and then they bring it with them when they come here.
It's that Starbucks coffee. I'm telling you right now. Like,
it must be it.
Jenna drinks that Starbucks coffee and she becomes a different person. Like, I just don't even know. Like, she's like, Starbucks. I'm like, okay.
I have to admit, I'll tell them this. If I have my choice, I choose Starbucks. They really do have the best coffee if you're talking about to-go coffee.
But I don't know.
You might want to argue with me.
I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is with you women, though. Because, like, you women, like, it's the longest Starbucks order of all time. Like, Jenna's like, I want almond milk. I want this. I want that. I'm like, okay, we just list off 100 different things. Can we just order, like, a regular coffee?
No. We want it the way we want it. I'll tell you, it was so funny, because just the other day I had, one of my campaign staff in the last election. He brought it up. He's like, yeah, no, what about your Starbucks order, And he was like, I got it down, though. And I'm like, you did. You were the only one who could get my coffee right. And I've been trying to retrain somebody else to get my coffee right. And it hasn't happened yet. My deputy's getting close, though.
Because God forbid if you get the coffee wrong.
It screws up the whole day.
It's a mess.
It does. It messes up everything.
And and especially if it's like your wife or your girlfriend or your, like, maybe your mom, like, you're messing up that coffee order is like worse than messing up with your bosses, because at least your boss isn't going to be like totally, she's going to be mad, but she ain't going to be that mad. But if it's like your wife or your girlfriend, like, you're going to be the doghouse. Like, it don't matter.
Maybe that's the problem. Maybe these Seattle teams are bringing some Starbucks with them, and there's something wrong with it. They're just screwing up coffee orders. They're making sure that the Wings don't have what they need.
They must get Amazon Prime, like, some some energy buzzes or whatever.
Yeah, it's got to be something. That's got.
But
we've got to figure it out.
You brought up a good point, though. I want to go back to it a little bit because we got sidetracked for a minute. Like,
we got sidetracked with coffee. It was very bad.
Because Starbucks, But you brought up a good point about Steve Yzerman and an insurance policy of Patrick Kane. And I really want to harp on that right now, because, like, we all know that Steve Yzerman has he's thinking of stuff that's not going to happen, and that's what good leadership does.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that with the trade deadline in the NFL, I'm pretty sure Brad Holmes is thinking right now, okay, what if I lose this player? Can I recoup the same, play out of that player, or should I go get someone? And with Patrick Kane on the free agent list, you don't have to trade for him. You could just go sign him, and you got the cap room to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm pretty sure Steve Yzerman's thinking to himself, he goes, okay, if I lost Lucas Raymond for an extended period of time, or to Brinkett, what would happen? What would happen? Like, would we still be the same team that we are, or would we kind of hit a lull and be like the November and December Red Wings from last year? I'm pretty sure he's thinking of that right now because, obviously when you're a general manager, you're not thinking like playoffs right now, because we're not thinking playoffs right now. But
Right.
You're thinking of, how do I put the best team on the ice, and how do I sustain that with things that will happen over the course of an NHL season? And in this case, you got Patrick Kane, who's ready to be he's ready to be there, and that's what you want. That's what you want to do. Now I think we lost Cindy.
I am back.
Oh man, dark.
I'm sorry I went dark on you.
Whew, I thought something was going on.
I had to send you a super secret bat.
Oh, don't you worry. We're about to wrap up the podcast. It's all good. We're gonna be fine.
You keep forgetting what an important person I am, and I carved this time.
Yeah, you know what? We talked about it on the last podcast, how you're tangling chavances with Robert De Niro and Mark Wahlberg, and you're well, you don't like the president right now, so I can't say you're at the president's office because
Yeah, no, I used to be.
Well,
I used to be in that rarefied
back in better times. Yeah, back in better times, because we won't get into that.
Yeah, but, we won't get into that. But yes, Steve. I think Steve Yzerman is wise enough to know that he's going to need to have an insurance policy in his back pocket if this team looks like could really make a cup run. Certainly, again, to get into the playoffs. And I think that was Steve's kind of vision all along, was to bring on these really dynamic acquisitions during either free agency or during the off season, in order to get his young core some playoff experience. I think he thinks they were ready for that, and the whole goal is to get them to the postseason, get these guys some playoff experience for the intention of making a cup run in the next 2 years. So, but perhaps they might go all the way. They've even done that before, as far as their thinking. Steve's even said, last season, let's see how far they can get.
Look at the baby snakes.
Right.
Look at the baby snakes. The Diamondbacks of Arizona.
Yeah.
They lost 100 games a year ago, and they're in the World Series right now. That's just how quick things can change. I always tell people that things can change quickly in sports. Like, you think you're bad now, and then all of a sudden you get good really, really quick. Like the Lions, they started 1-6 last year, and then all of a sudden they just start running the table, and you're like, okay. So then you go to this year, and you're like, I expect good things out of them. With the Red Wings, like in hockey, it's one of the most unpredictable sports next to baseball.
That is true.
It's one of the most unpredictable sports next to baseball, because you see teams all the time making runs that you're like, what? Like, who had Florida Panthers last year at the Stanley Cup Finals? No one.
Nobody. The only thing is, I told you the Boston wasn't going to make it, and now that they're back to kind of what we'll see. But I don't know. I don't know if Boston is even going to make it deeper into the playoffs. It's really too early to make those kind of predictions. But I do think that the Red Wings are continuing to show that they have what it takes. They've got the talent now. Nobody can say that they don't have talent. They have talent. They've got guys who have higher expectations. And that's another thing we talked about, is the fact that these guys that are on the team now have the expectation to make the postseason, because they usually have with other teams they've been with. So they have full expectations of making the postseason. And that will be a really new thing. I mean, Dylan Larkin, I think, is the only player on that team from the, prior to this season on the Red Wings that had any playoff experience, and that was what, 7-8 years ago.
2015, 2016, yeah.
Yeah. So this isn't a city that's seen those playoffs. This franchise has not seen the playoffs in quite a few seasons. So I think even getting there is going to be a huge part of building on the next 2 seasons for sure.
Well, you always want to get yourself in the playoffs because you never know what could happen. Like we said, it's unpredictable. But the one thing that you could say is the way that Steve Yzerman has been doing it, we've both been a fan of because he hasn't taken the approach of, yeah, let's go do this and let's go take the easy way. He's taken a little bit of the hard way, but the hard way is more. The longevity is more worth it than if you just went out and that you traded all your picks for a guy, like that doesn't work in hockey, and it doesn't work in most sports, unless you're playing in basketball where you're trying to get like LeBron or Giannis or someone like that. It just doesn't work. It never has. So Steve Yzerman's been playing his cards the right way. We'll see what he does to add pieces to the puzzle over the course of a season, because there's going to be times where he can add someone. Maybe because they're trying to, get some roster cap flexibility.
Right.
You never know how that can go. But Steve Yzerman has put himself in the position where if a team calls and goes, okay, look, I got a player that I need to get off this freaking roster because I'm up against the salary cap and I only have 19 guys in my lineup. Steve Yzerman picks up the phone, says, "Yep, I'll give you a 7th round pick." No. Well, you gotta do that. So that's what you gotta think of. And then Patrick Kane be on the free agent market, like we said, that's a big opener. So, Cindy, you have anything else to say?
I have nothing else that I could possibly add to your brilliant analysis, Joe. Otherwise, I'm just really excited for these games coming up right here.
Yeah, so you got the Jets, the Bruins. Those are both the Bruins in New York will be on the road. But this is a good test for the Red Wings going forward. So we'll see.
What's your prediction, Joe? That's my thing. If you put that graphic back up, you tell me what's your prediction out of those 3. What's your prediction?
I'll say 2-1.
2-1. Which one do you think they're going to lose?
I think they lose to the Islanders. I think they beat the Bruins. I do. I think that they're going to beat the Bruins.
Okay.
I think they'll hand the Bruins their first loss. How about that?
I think you're right. I think they're ready to do that. I think they're going to fight for that, but I think that's going to be a hell of a battle. Everyone, I'm telling you, grab your popcorn, grab your best buddies, sit down and get ready to watch that game, because that is going to be a humdinger. You think you've seen something so far? Wait until Saturday's game against Boston. I'm going to go I think what's going to happen is I actually God, I almost want to agree with you, but I'm going to say I think they're going to sweep it. They're going to go all 3. They're going to take all 3: Winnipeg, Boston, and the Islanders.
If they could sweep it, that'd really show you how good this team can be. So we're going to see what's going to happen. But, the one thing that I can say is if this game, this Bruins game is on a Saturday, it's a good thing because I don't have a college football team this year. So we will, both my college football teams suck. So we are going to go on and, it's hockey Saturday and I'm actually going to get a good matchup and, screw Michigan State football. Where's my Red Wings?
I'm a Spartan and I got to agree with you there.
It's been brutal, but we got our dog down in East Lansing with Trey Augustine, the goalie. We're going to profile some prospects next week. So stay tuned to that. But this has been a great podcast, Cindy. I know you got to run because you're a very famous person with a very particular set of skills. And we will see you guys next week on another episode of the Red Alert podcast. I will see you guys next week, as will Cindy, and we will see you in the next podcast.